Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie and today is actually my birthday. Yay me! So today, the day I'm filming, the 24th of July, is my birthday and I'm turning 23 this year, which is very fun and exciting. And July has actually been a very productive month for me. So I actually ended up buying a car, and this is the first car that I've bought and like registered in my own name. So this is like my very first car all by myself, which is very exciting and has been a pain to deal with because you get the car and then all of a sudden the car's making a noise and you go to the mechanic and the mechanic's really difficult to like get a hold of, and so you go to a different mechanic and then they tell you that one thing's wrong with it and you're like, okay, I'd just like to fix that thing, and they're like, okay, but you can fix that thing and everything else, and I'm like, no, I just want to fix that thing, and they're like, okay, we're gonna have you fix that thing and everything else, and you're like, no, I just wanted that thing fixed, please only fix that thing, and they're like, just that thing? And you're like, yes. And then you get it back from the mechanic after they fixed just that thing because you fought for them to just fix that one thing and not add anything else to your tab. But then it started making another noise and you're like, did they actually fix it or did they fuck up my car? Anyway, in other news, I've also started mounted archery practice. If I can figure out how to edit it, I'll put that in the video. I've also read a lot this month, but none of the books I read, I felt like I could really make a whole video on just that book. So I thought I'd do more of a normal monthly wrap up instead of individualized reviews of each book. I know there's still a week left in July, but I don't think I'm gonna get another book read by the end of the week. So I think I'm just gonna do a wrap up on the books that I read so far. Alrighty, let's start with The Horse Whisperer by Nicholas Evans. So I got this in a blind book date and I actually had the surprise revealed to me because I accidentally looked at the receipt. Oops. But The Horse Whisperer was written in 1995 and is a pretty popular book, especially if you're in the horse community. Not only is this book, but also the movie that was made after it. And I just happened to have never read it before, so I thought this was the perfect way to get into some horsey culture. Like I said, I'm a huge horse girl. I grew up reading horse books, but this was something that just never interested me until now. This is an adult literary novel about a woman and her daughter recovering from a traumatic incident. It's a very slow and kind of gruesome book. So it starts out with a horrific and very detailed semi-truck accident. So a semi-truck crashes into these two girls and their horses, resulting in the death of one of the girls and her horse, and then the horrifying accident and disablement of the other girl and her horse. Annie, the main character, believes that there is a connection between Grace, her daughter, and her horse Pilgrim. Even after every professional tells Annie that she needs to put Pilgrim down to put him out of his misery, she feels that there is that connection, and if Pilgrim is able to be saved, then her daughter will be able to recover, and so she fights to keep Pilgrim alive. All of the professionals in the area, all of the vets and whatnot, refuse to work with him because even though his body is healing, he's been stitched up and his face has been repaired and all that, his mind is fully broken. I mean, he's been through a very traumatic accident just like Gracie has. She finds this man named Tom out in Montana who just has a way with horses, and he's the horse whisperer. And even Tom won't work with Pilgrim. He says that he's too far beyond help and he just needs to be put out of his misery. But Annie will not take that answer, and so she drives Pilgrim from New York City to Montana to force Tom to cure him. This book was fine up until the end. The end made me very angry and I didn't like it, and so I rated it very poorly because of the end. But also there are some little things throughout the book that just put me off of it. The writing style is fine. It's slow, like I said, and not a lot happens. It's very much a talking book. It starts out with that horrific accident, but other than that, it's just talking and conflict between people who don't like each other for no reason. So that's all the book is. Some of the things that just put me off of the book was I did not like the mistreatment of Pilgrim by everyone. The professionals have to wrestle him to get him to cooperate. There are two boys who take pleasure in forcing him to do what they say or do what they want, and they beat him with brooms and stuff. And I get that thematically that's supposed to show that Pilgrim does not feel safe with these people, and that's why he's like crazy. But then also Tom mistreats him, even though he's supposed to be like the holistic horse whisperer, and I didn't think that was good. I think that, Tom this whole time was talking about training from the horse's perspective, like with the horse in mind, keeping them safe, letting them tell you what they need, and then all of a sudden he's like abusing Pilgrim, and it works, and I'm like, I didn't like that. That was not a good thing. The whole idea of the book is that it's supposed to be about Annie and Grace recovering from this traumatic incident, recovering what they had before, trying to reconnect, and Gracie becoming like her old self again after a traumatic incident. But it really does feel like Gracie has a good cry and then is just fixed. Her whole thing is that she doesn't want to ride anymore. She doesn't want Pilgrim as a horse anymore. Like she wants him to leave and stuff. But then she has a good cry, and all of a sudden she's riding and she's fine with it, and she's adapting to her new body because she did get her leg amputated and whatnot. That's not how recovery works. It's not all, smiles and stuff once you accept what happened. Like, she still had to watch her friend die, and she suffers from survivor's guilt from that. And it really just feels like she cried and then was able to get back on the horse, and I didn't like that. Spoilers for the book if you're interested in it at all, or if you've ever wanted to read it. I'm gonna spoil the ending. The ending that made me really angry is that Annie and Tom, so Annie, who is a married woman, has a fling with Tom. It was very insta-lovey. It wasn't really a will they, won't they. It was, he saw her beautiful eyes and you knew that they were gonna fuck, right? The sex scene was really gross, and Annie and Tom have this fling, and she knows him for a month, but she's willing to leave her husband for him, and that angers Gracie. Obviously, she came here to recover mentally and physically, and then her mom wants to break up her entire family. She runs off in anger and wants to do something dramatic to free herself from everything that's going on, and Tom goes out to save her and accidentally gets killed by a horse. There was just another random wild horse that kills Tom. That is the end of the book. That's the last chapter, and then there's an epilogue where Annie now has a child, and it's Tom's child. It's very obviously Tom's child, but everybody's happy now. Annie's never gonna forget Tom, and Gracie's recovered, and she and Pilgrim are best buds again, and she rides again and things like that, and the dad is unaware of anything that's going on. One of the things I found so problematic about that is not just that Tom just is thrown away, but a big part of Annie's story, and even kind of Grace's story, is that Annie had 4 or 5 miscarriages after having Gracie, and Grace was their only daughter, and that hurt Grace so much that now that after this accident she has destroyed the family because she was the only child that they had, and now she's broken, and so she feels that Annie put so much onto her and she is unable to give anything back or whatever, and if she wasn't the only child she wouldn't feel this way anymore. And Annie, a big part of her story was that she felt like she was not able to give her husband any more children, and that he blamed her even though he didn't, and she blamed herself for not being able to have these children and having several miscarriages after Grace. And then all of a sudden she fucks another guy and is able to have children again, and everything's happy-go-lucky, and that just felt really icky and really problematic. It was a horrible end to everybody's story. Tom was thrown away, Grace just recovered, and then Annie was able to have a child and was fixed, and that just did not sit right with me. So I gave this book a 2.75 stars. Very disappointing read, I guess, in my opinion. Okay, so I definitely wanted something pretty light after reading such a heavy and emotional book. And I happened to find these 2 books at a Christian thrift store. I love searching the book section in different thrift stores to see if I can find Animorphs, used Animorph books, because I'm collecting them. And I found these, and I was like, wow, they're both the first volume of the series, might as well. I never got onto the Heartstopper train when it got really big on Netflix and before it became adapted by Netflix, but I was really like blown away by this book. I was afraid it would fall into the trend of like fetishization and trivialization of queer relationships when it comes to young men loving men relationships. The biggest fans of those ships and, you know, stories that involve them are like young white women, which is very icky to me. Not that young white women can't like queer ships, it's just the fact that it's a whole big picture kind of thing where only young white women love gay ships. It's like weird. But anyway, I don't think this falls into that. It's a fluffy, cute high school romance. I think the fan base might fall into that trend, but this as a piece of media does not. It's a cute, fluffy high school story about two kids realizing they have feelings for each other. It's friends to lovers, which I think was really cute. And it's not really a coming out story, so Charlie already has come out the previous years in school and everyone's knows about it. Everyone's pretty cool about it. He meets Nick and Nick invites him to play on the rugby team and they get really close as friends, and then Nick starts to realize that he's got feelings for Charlie that aren't just friendship feelings, and he's like, what is this? So there's a story of self-discovery, but it's not really a coming out story, which is really cute and refreshing. Not something I get to see very often. I do tend to prefer graphic novels that use the art and the way the panels are set up to tell a story. And so this book wasn't just like panel, 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 panel with like dialogue over it the entire page, right? So there was a good flow of the panels and the scenes. So the story, like the art, had movement and fluidity, which was really good and helpful to read. So you could tell like what the characters were feeling without them just outright stating it, and the art really helped elevate the story, which is what I think a graphic novel should strive for. Just a real cute book. I think I rated it like 4.25 stars, something like that. A 4 point something. Do I think I'm going to continue the series? Not really. It did leave off on a cliffhanger, and I just am not that interested to continue on to see what the answer is. I don't know if I'll even watch the Netflix adaptation. I don't know. The first book was enough for me. If I see it at another like thrift store for $1.99, maybe, but I don't think I'm going to seek out the next story. Heartstopper is by Alice Oseman, by the way. Next, I read Check Please by Ngozi Ukazu. This is also a queer graphic novel, but it was published in 2014. This is about a college freshman, Eric Biddle, who was like a figure skating world champion and also a vlogger and recreational baker who joins the hockey team for his scholarship because he knows how to play hockey, but he's never played like professional hockey, so he's not really used to like the checking part of hockey because hockey is a full contact sport. But he, like, I don't know. This book is not as interesting as Heartstopper, and I think it also suffers from like too much and not enough. There's so much going on in this book. Like I had a lot of trouble trying to explain it because there's so much going on. We don't get to go in depth in it. So he is a world champion figure skater, and yet the world champion figure skating like doesn't come into play at all. It's not like he gave up figure skating to, you know, use hockey as a scholarship. It's not like he misses it or wants to go back to it. He never talks about how figure skating is different than hockey skating. It's not really a part of his story. The only time it's used is for like one scene. It's featured on the back here where he does like a cool spin jump, that's what it's called, and somebody takes a picture of it for the school newspaper. That's literally the only time his figure skating is like really mentioned. The book is set up as if he's vlogging and explaining his experiences, and the first book is his first and second year at college. I really wish it had just been his first year because then we could get a little more in-depth in the relationships that they have and that they form, and we could get more information about Biddy as a character because right now it's just kind of snapshots of things. I also think the romance is kind of rushed and comes out of nowhere. So this is a will they, won't they kind of thing, but it was more of like, so the love interest is Jack. It's like, is Jack, does he like me? Does he believe in me? is he my friend? Is he not my friend? That kind of thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, there's some more feelings. And it's like, I didn't see that coming. I mean, I did obviously because it's cliche, but it's like, I didn't see it as like in the narrative as relevant or set up very well. This is kind of like the opposite of Heartbreaker. It is so much dialogue and it's so much to read. It is literally just panel, panel, panel with a bunch of dialogue and inner narration just overlaid on top of that. So it's very stilted and all of the scenes just kind of feel stiff because I'm reading so much dialogue. I don't even get to see the pictures. I wish that had been a little bit less. Like, look at this. That's so much dialogue for one frame. I did like the bro-y, sportsy feel because it was just like bros on a team hanging out. They talked about dates, they talked about drinking, but it was like the boys will be boys in a nice, innocent, fun way, not like a creepy, gross way. And it just reminded me of like all of my guy friends and how they interact and joke around and how fun it is to just kind of watch as a spectator coming from the girl world, looking into the boy world. You're like, you guys have a very different relationship with your friends. Anyway, a lot of millennial humor. Like I said, it did come out in 2014, so it's like BuzzFeed millennial humor, which is fine, whatever. Also, will not be seeking out the second book. I don't really care about the rest of the series. Also ended on a cliffhanger, and I was like, okay, whatever. So I gave this one like a 3, like a solid just 3 stars because there wasn't really anything to it. I think Heartstopper is the better of the two, but I'm glad I read both of them. They were both very light, fluffy, romancy, cute stories. So next we have Little Family by Ishmael Bia. This was a Dollar Tree book, but I didn't think I had enough thoughts on it to make a whole Dollar Tree book review. So I'm just gonna tack it on to here. This is marketed as if it's a found family group of orphans looking out for each other and, you know, caring for each other and whatnot, but it really, really is not about that. It is about some orphans who live in like an unnamed African city, but it really, I believe they do mention it's Freedom Town in Sierra Leone, so I don't know why it's like unnamed African city, but it's somewhere in Sierra Leone. I believe they even say Freedom Town at one point, but not the point. They do take care of each other and they do try and survive in this like corrupt city where they are, you know, stealing, but also like doing odd jobs for corrupted people in order to get a little bit of money and things like that. But really what the story is about is Kuriyamata wanting to not live this life and wanting to live a normal, regular life. Kuriyamata is the oldest girl in the group. She's, I believe, 18. And she meets this group of, like, beautiful people who are all the rich elites of this town. They are the sons and daughters of diplomats and rich people who get super educated in England and go on vacations to America and France and things like that. And they take an interest in Kuriyamata and don't realize that she's, like, an orphan and whatnot, so she pretends to come from their world and hang out with them, basically. The conflict is supposed to be like Kuri wanting to be a part of this but also wanting to take care of her little family, but she is almost never with her little family, and when she is with the family, she like doesn't want to be there. She is just thinking about what she's going to say the next time she meets the beautiful people. I was really hoping for like found family working together, being, you know, a band of thieves trying to make it within this corrupt, unjust world, but this is really just like Kuri's inner monologue as she tries to be something she's not yet. There is some action, like there's a full-on heist scene, which is really cool, and there are some like philosophical debates about colonization, which I was really, really here for. But I kid you not, between every interesting scene, it's just Kuriyamata trying to figure out how she's getting from one location to the next. Like, am I going to take the taxi or am I going to walk there? Like, that is all it is. She just kind of like walks from one place to the next and thinks about how she's going to get to the next location and whatnot. And then she gets to that location. There's like an interesting discussion on colonization. And then she walks back home. And it's like, I don't need to know that she walked back home. Like, nothing interesting happened there. It was really weird. That's so much of the book is just her getting from one location to the next. It was really hard to connect to the characters because they themselves wouldn't open up and connect like within the narrative. We don't really get any backstory for the characters. I mean, we get a little bit of like how they got to each other, but not really in-depth backstories for them or like what their feelings are about the backstories or anything. Kuriyamata will not let herself think about her history, like her backstory, her old life, and she doesn't want to think about like what her life could be with the beautiful people. So we are just stuck with her in the moment as she walks from one location to the next. There's some head hopping between Kuriyamata and like Elamane and Kapindi and Indevue and Namsa, but like not enough for it to be actual perspective changes, just head hopping of like, oh, now Elamane is over here and he's meeting this person, and nope, we're back with Kuriyamata, and then we're back with Namsa and things like that. And it was very weird because we didn't use that as ways to get into the head of the other people. We just got it as like a transition to the next scene. So that's why it was really hard to connect with these characters, is because they did not want to emotionally connect at all with anything. And then we were just told that they were connected to each other. And I was like, I don't really feel that, but whatever. Like I said, there were interesting discussions about like colonization and nationalism. And there's this one really great debate where she is at a very fancy restaurant and all of the food on the menu is foreign. And so she asked the waiter, like, is there any food from this country that you serve? And they're like, yes, it's on our native menu. Let me go get it from the back. And so she sparks this debate of like, why is our native food on a separate menu that they hide away? Like, why is all of the food that they present foreign? And like, are we ashamed to eat what is like our cultural food? And that debate was like really interesting, and I was so here for that. There's some other scenes where she talks about colonization and nationalism, and those were the like really interesting scenes, but those were few and far between. There was also a line in the book, in the very beginning of the book, that I think is my favorite line that I've read so far. I believe it's Indevue who says this, but he says something about like, I get to choose the kind of fool I want to be. And that is such a fucking hard line. I thought about that line for like days after. I just sat up in bed and I thought about it. Like, I get to choose the kind of fool I want to be. I think the ending was lackluster, kind of cliche, kind of just ends because it decided to end, not because there was an actual ending, but whatever. I give this like, I don't even know, like 2.75, 3 stars, because it's okay. I mean, it's got some great scenes. It's not a great book though. It's just an okay book. Not for me. I wish that there was more in-depth characterization and that it was more character-based rather than location-based. I'm not gonna give that up. That's mean, but those are my thoughts. And lastly is the Songs of the Seven Gelfling Clans. So there's this little movie from the 80s called The Dark Crystal, and if you're not aware, it's a Jim Henson production, so it's like all puppets, but it is a very dark, like high fantasy movie that bombed at the box office. It was not received well, but it got a cult following. And a few years ago, the Jim Henson production company actually made a Netflix prequel series called Age of Resistance, and I love that series so much. I love The Dark Crystal. I grew up watching it. Like, I had the VHS growing up, so I grew up watching it. And when Age of Resistance came out, I was amazed by it because they used mostly puppets, but they also used CGI. And so, unfortunately, it also kind of bombed on Netflix and nobody watched it. And so it got canceled. It's also just very expensive. Like, puppets are horribly expensive, right? So it didn't make enough money. It got canceled, which is super sad after one season. I found this at a Dollar Tree last year, and I was stoked to find this book because it's fan stuff. It's stuff for fans of Dark Crystal, and I got it for $1. Can you believe that? Oh my gosh. And I had it for a while, and I just never read it because it's just a lore book about the series is just extra knowledge and I didn't really need it, but I decided to finally read it because it is this beautiful like art book. It's got like gorgeous arts, and it's really nothing new to say. It's just interesting facts about the various clans. It's just book lore for the prequel. It is interesting for the clans that aren't really seen in the show. So like the show centers around a Gelfling from Vapra, Groton, and or Grot, and Stone and Wood or something like that. And so there's 7 clans, and so we get some daily life on clans that we don't really get to see, which was really interesting. We get to see like the culture of different Gelfling. But like I said, nothing really to talk about, just that it's a beautiful, beautiful book with arts. It's a lore book. If you're into like fandom, gaming, anything like that, you've probably seen something like this, where it just talks about the characters. It is set in character, so it is basically about a bard character from Stone and Wood going to the different clans and learning about them, and then writing down like the songs, like the cultural songs and their daily life and things like that, which is really interesting to me. This is a very niche interest of mine. Really, this has one job to do, and that is to make you want to watch the Age of Resistance show, and it succeeded in that. I just restarted watching it yesterday. So if you're into puppets, if you're into Jim Henson, if you're into Dark Crystal, this is great. This is a great book for that. I will say I put this on my story graph, and it categorized it as nonfiction, but it's like set in character, so it is fiction, but it's still categorized as like nonfiction, which is very weird to me, but whatever. Beautiful. It's gorgeous. Alrighty, so that was my July wrap up. Like I said, there's still like a week left in July, but I don't think I'll be able to finish a book within that week. I'm a very slow reader. The only reason I read so many of these books is because they were either super short or they were graphic novels. So if you've read any of these books, or if you've read any other books by these authors, let me know in the comments what your thoughts and opinions are. And if you have any recommendations for some books, I guess, put them down in the comments. And what did you read in the month of July? Let me know. I'm very interested. Also, everyone should tell me happy birthday. I'm 23 years old today. So I guess, bye! I can't think of anything funny, so I'm just gonna stop recording.